Going to turn this over to Yesenia Sanchez Garcia, the director of our Latinx Resource Center.
Great, thank you so much, Jennifer, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm looking forward to a conversation and engaging with you all. As Jennifer mentioned, my name is Yesenia Sanchez. My pronouns are she, her, ella, and I'm the director of the Latinx Resource Center, which I'm looking forward to also sharing more about shortly in the presentation. So let's begin here. And so I'll walk through the presentation. I have some content to share with all of you, and then we'll do a Q&A in the end. If you do have questions, please note them. I'm not as easily accessible to the chat because I have the share screen, but I'm happy to answer questions at the end of the presentation. Great. So there's three main objectives that I have for today's discussion with all of you. Primarily, we'll be sharing more about the Latinx Resource Center, who we are, our focus, our programs and services, with the intent that you have more information in order to be able to refer your students, be able to connect them with the Latinx Resource Center, and yourself be knowledgeable about who we are. Also seek to provide more information for those of you that might not be as familiar, to gain a better understanding of who the Latinx community is, specifically in the San Diego region, and providing more historical context. Additionally, we'll have a section, a bit limited, but hopefully it's the beginning of an ongoing conversation and expansion of knowledge around the stereotypes and biases directed towards the Latinx community, specifically what we've, information that we've gained from our students, and discussing a bit more how these impact the students that we serve. I do want to note that the content in this presentation is simplified due to the limited time that we have today, about 40 minutes for the full conversation. And I welcome each of you to really this being the beginning and the ongoing process of extending your own knowledge and your own information and discussions with others. Conversations specifically around implicit bias and its impacts require much more extensive and ongoing discussions, and CIAE is an excellent source for you to continue having those trainings and resources around implicit bias. So with that being said, the Latinx Resource Center, we are one of the 9 cultural centers here at SDSU. And our mission focuses on supporting Latinx students throughout their journey at SDSU to succeed and thrive academically, socially, and mentally, with a commitment to intersectionality, inclusivity, equity, and social and racial justice. The LRC launched in February of last year. We actually had our grand opening just about a month before we went remote. And when completed, the LRC will be located inside the Love Library next to the Chicana and Chicana collections. We have within our center 6 guiding principles that guide our work, our values, our programming, and how we engage as a center. Our first one is comunidad, which stands for community, which at LRC our focus is on building community and fostering well-being across a powerful and diverse collective. We strive to think beyond the individual self, reflecting on the well-being of our community as a whole, and how we can give back, and how we can support others now and after graduation, and the responsibilities and connections we have, those not just at SDSU, but beyond the campus. As a community, a colectivo, we are strong together. And this really speaks to us fostering community within our students, and for students to see their community at SDSU and beyond. Our second principle is colaboración, collaboration, where at the LRC we work together. We recognize that collaboration amongst ourselves and with those beyond our immediate community and beyond the campus is essential to our collective progress. This specifically also speaks to our collaboration and our intentional collaboration amongst the various cultural centers at SDSU, as well as collaborations and partnerships that we seek to continue developing with various offices and departments across SDSU. Conocimientos, knowledge, is our third principle. For us at the LRC, knowledge and learning matter. We know, following on the history of our community movements, that education is our stand. Academics can empower us. Mastering disciplinary knowledge can allow room to challenge inequities. And so within the LRC, we really value knowledge that students gain at SDSU, that they gain throughout their academic journey, as well as the wisdom that they bring from their elders and ancestors, and the wisdom that exists in our community. Our fourth principle is confianza, trust, which speaks to the relationship building. Our relationships are founded on trust to one another, to our communities, and as a whole. Specifically, we seek to hold ourselves accountable, ensure that everything that we do is rooted in a desire to best serve our communities and grow together. And specifically within this, we really foster accountability within our students and that trust building amongst each other, as well as with our peers and the community as a whole. Our fifth principle is consciousness, conciencia. At the LRC, we are clear that justice and equity matter, and we are grounded in that consciousness raising. We are our ancestors' wildest dreams, achieving through higher education what generations before us were excluded from, fought for, and disposed of. Carrying this history with us, always social and racial justice are at the heart of what we do. And I'll speak in a bit more about our areas of focus, but this specifically this principle, this value is intertwined through all of our programming, our services, how we see our work, and our impact and purpose at SDSU. And lastly, conexiones, relationship building. At the LRC, we are a diverse community connected through mutual respect and love. We know that each of us arrives to every space we inhabit with multiple intersectional identities, growing from different lived experiences, commitments, and points of view. It is through embracing these differences that we as a collective learn and grow. And this speaks to our intent in fostering community, fostering relationship building, but also being intentional in creating a space where students can show up authentically and fully. That we know that as students oftentimes find themselves in spaces where they have to leave behind or invisibilize a part of themselves, of their identities. And at the LRC, we want to be intentional that students can find that space, that safe and brave space where they can show up fully and not have to leave behind any one part of themselves. Within the LRC, in our current programming, we have 4 areas of focus, which are academic success, identity exploration and information, mental health and wellness, and social and racial justice. And these really guide our programming. In the spring semester, and as I mentioned previously, we went remote about a month after our opening. So 100% of our programming, our services, everything, our organizational development has been virtual in this virtual and in remote format. The spring semester of last year, we launched a program called Retention Support Project, through which we trained a group of community care coaches that contacted over 450 Latinx students. We began with first-year students and then worked our way up. Students that were not being already served by other centers or other offices such as EOP or Compact Success. And our main intent with the students was reaching them and engaging them to see how they were doing, check in if they were having any struggles or challenges, and then in assessment when there was an issue, being able to directly refer them to specific SCSU offices and services. And we contacted students through 8 weeks about 4 to 5 times. So it's ongoing content. Through that project, what we found, the 2 main challenges the students were having was mental health and the lack of feeling part of a community or a connections, which we saw that is a challenge across SCSU, but particularly to our Latinx students. This helped us ground and center 2 of our support groups, which are In Confianza at SCSU. In Confianza specifically offers a safe and welcoming space for students who identified as Latinx, and provides a space for them to build community, come together, addressing issues and challenges that they're facing, and providing them tools. It is a partnership directly with the counseling and psychological services, so it comes from a mental health and wellness lens. And additionally, it is the first support group at SCSU that has been ongoing in Spanglish. So we welcome students who feel more comfortable in Spanish, English, or a mixture, and feel more comfortable in Spanglish, so that students can really, again, show up and not feel they have to, speak one language or another. For those of you that work with students, our In Confianza support group meets every Thursday on a weekly basis at 3 p.m. And I'll provide more information how you can access, or students can access these. Our second support group that we launched last semester is Joteria Sin Fronteras, which is a support group for students who identify in the intersection of LGBTQIQ+ and Latinx, for students to have a space to come together through radical joy, friendship, and knowledge, and really fostering that sense of community at SCSU. It is a support group in partnership with the Pride Center, and Joteria meets also on a weekly basis from 7 to 8 p.m. We also launched last semester, and then reimagined it this semester, a virtual space, a virtual desk, or what we call our virtual sala, or in English would be our virtual living room, as a space that students can come and meet our student staff and be provided with specific resources, information about the LRC, connection to the various SCSU services and offices, as well as just a space for them to come and connect with one another, which we continue to see it's a huge need with our students in this virtual format. Our virtual desk is open Monday through Wednesday from 11 to 1 p.m. And we have several student staff who manage the welcome desk, as well as provide academic support in an array of various courses, and then support with for students who need support with papers or presentations. One sort of emerging theme that we've been seeing in the virtual desk is students coming whose primary language is not English. So English is second language, and who speak Spanish. And so they've been coming for support with our students, which all of whom are bilingual. Lastly, our inaugural program, and one of our foundational programs, is our Comunidad Scholars, which is a first year experience program that seeks to provide Latinx students with holistic support grounded on a cultural wealth and strength-based lens to ensure their academic success, retention, and graduation. And students within our Comunidad Scholars program take part in a course which meets weekly and is taught by our faculty scholar, Dr. Michael Dominguez. And then scholars are paired with a peer mentor who then works with them on a one-on-one basis. Through our Comunidad Scholars last semester, which when we launched it, we targeted first year incoming students, commuter students, and we had a group of 40 students. And next year we will be expanding to also include residential students, as well as currently working with the Residential Education Office to launch a Latinx learning community for our students who are our residential students. So moving from the LRC, I wanted to provide some historical context, sort of have some terminology that may be useful, especially for faculty and identifiers of how Latinas and Latinos identify. So one term that is commonly used, has historically commonly been used, is Hispanic, which describes Latinas and Latinos in the US. Specifically, refers to those from countries that are Spanish speaking. To provide some context to it, in the 1970s specifically, the US government proposed this idea of having category for people of Hispanic or Spanish origin. And it was twofold. Both, one, to what they sought to more accurately count individuals of Latin American descent for purposes of the census, engaging, voter registration and governmental use. The other piece to this was also in line with the rise in the Chicano movement, the Young Lords in the East Coast, Brown Berets, and several organized groups that were really calling against assimilation efforts by the government of Latin American folks. And so we also see this push for the use of Hispanic as a push against this rise and these civil rights movement within the Latin American community in the US. Hispanic has mainly been used as a blanket word to encompass the entire Latin American community, which in itself erases the history of the creation of the term, as well as the distinct differences between the large communities that exist within Latin America. Furthermore, what we see with Hispanic is that it can be exclusionary in that its origin refers to Spanish-speaking countries. And thus, while Hispanic includes Spain, it does not necessarily include countries like Brazil, Belize, Guyana, French Guiana, and Suriname, where Spanish is not the primary language that is spoken. Let me just move my bar here. Another term that is used is Latina Latino, a term that encompasses individuals of Latin American heritage and with distinct immigration histories. This term has gained traction, especially in recent decades, and began with younger generations, but has become much more utilized throughout the country. While this term is broad and inclusive, many have also pointed to the component of Latin in Latina Latino in Latin America as an Eurocentric and a term that is derived from that idea that this part of Latin America was shaped and defined solely by Latin-derived languages and cultures of Iberian, specifically Spanish and Portuguese, political powers that colonized most of North, Central, and South America. And thus, another recurring criticism with the term Latina Latino and Latinidad in general is that it erases and invisibilizes Black indigenous communities in Latin America and the diaspora. Another recent term and a derivation of Latina and Latino is Latinx, and you'll see the specific use of the X instead of the A and the O, which has been gaining traction in recent years, specifically advanced in the last 10 years by Latinx LGBT community calling to gender neutralize the term, as well as to have a term embracing a term that was more gender inclusive and inclusive of non-binary individuals who are also Latinx. It originally originated online through mostly a community of queer Latinx individuals, but now we've seen traction of it, especially within younger generations, as well as in academic journals, essays, and books. And then another sort of derivation that I also want to bring attention to is Latinae, which is mostly used as a gender neutral term in Latin America and in the US, specifically has been used to express the hesitancy or the rejection of X as a signifier of linguistic imperialism. In Spanish language, the X creates a pronunciation problem and it's not feasible for many words to be utilized. And also alienates non-English speaking immigrants or migrants. And so you will see both Latinx, Latine, and specifically in Latin America, the term that is used is Latine. Another term is Chicana, Chicano, and Chicanx. And this term is utilized by people who recognize their identity as a political one, connected to the history of struggle and resistance, especially within the US. Chicano, at its inception, was a word that had political and social and political connotations due to the history of advocacy, specifically being led by Mexican Americans here in the US. It's a term that emerged in the 50s and 60s, along with the Chicano movement, the Chicana civil rights movement, as well as El Movimiento, which has been a civil rights movement extended to the Mexican American civil rights. Central to the Chicano movement were student and youth organizations such as the Brown Berets, which we've seen specifically here in the Southwest and in California, the Mexican American Student Confederation, and the Mexican American Student Association that eventually became the Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán, or better known as MECHA, in 1969. The use and recognition of the term Chicano by individuals in the US really signals a rejection of the Mexican American identity that accepted or connected with assimilation, and that, and especially in those decades, really shunned Mexican Americans and Latin Americans to feel shame or reject their cultural roots. So thus, people opted to take on and identify as Chicanos, reflecting that commitment to their political consciousness, self-respect, and pride in their cultural background. Specifically, I also want to note in the 1970s, Chicana women called on the Chicano movement to recognize the role of women and demanded the use of Chicana in the A to signify and recognize the inclusion of women, their role and impact in the movement. So moving to some statistics to sort of, position us here in San Diego, and specifically looking at where is the highest concentration of Latino population. So here is a graph with the 10 cities that have the highest density of Latino population. And as you'll see, San Diego is number 10 in the US. Additionally, looking at counties with the highest Latino population, we have, again, San Diego amongst the 10 and the 7th position. And as we know, within San Diego, we have high population of Latino residents and members of a community. And specifically here at SDSU, we are a Hispanic serving institution. And for that, I really welcome folks to connect with Dr. Emilio Ulloa, who's is here with us, who is the chair of the Office of Hispanic Affairs, to really, learning more about what does the HSI standing mean for us as an institution, and its impact for our students and all of us here at SDSU. So doing a time check, I know if I'm moving a bit fast, I want to make sure we have time for the conversation. But this part of what I wanted to focus on is providing some focus around misconceptions, especially what we've heard from our students and some of the challenges that they face in the classrooms and at SDSU. Foremost, before moving into this piece, I do want to position us in really recognizing that Latinos, Latinas, Latinx folks is a racially heterogeneous group, meaning that Latinos can be of African, Indigenous, Asian, European, or mixed race backgrounds, and primarily that we're not a monolithic Black, we're not a monolithic group. This is really important to recognize because we often, well, we see that the impact of this is that when we, as a society accept or don't question these notions of Latinos, Latinas as, non-diverse communities, it really invisibilizes and impacts those groups and communities that most marginalized within the Latinx community. A few common misconceptions that we see, and again, this is a very simplified context within the lens that I'm looking at from our students. Again, I welcome you all to continue expanding on this information and discussions. But three main misconceptions that we've seen that our students face is that they're often perceived to speak Spanish. Again, within the diversity in the Latinx community, both generational as well as who has had the access to language and keeping their language. The reality is that our students are very diverse. There are students who do speak Spanish and have been able to maintain the Spanish language. Other students who whose parents might be, they might be second, third generation and have not had the ability to keep the language, and other students who've outright have been denied their language, not only in Spanish, but also indigenous languages, other, indigenous languages and other languages such as Creole and Portuguese in other countries where, again, the Spanish is not the main language. The impact on this is what we've seen our students is that they're often will feel shame or feel a certain way of not being able to speak Spanish. So really encouraging us to really be intentional of not making not having biases or predisposed conceptions that students speak Spanish in your classroom, in the groups, or when interacting with students on a one-on-one basis. Another misconception that we see often is the idea that students are of Mexican descent. And this can be as simple as, where are you from in Mexico, or just an assumption, outright assumption of students being of Mexican descent. Some information that I pulled specifically on this from the Pew Research Center, which I highly recommend for information and data in regards to demographical data in research in general for the Latinx community. And specifically talks about how Mexicans are actually, while they are the largest origin, making up 60% of Latinos, the numbers have actually been decreasing in recent years. And specifically, Venezuelans, Dominicans, and Guatemalans have seen the fastest population growth since 2010. Here in specifically the San Diego region and California, we have a large number of both Guatemalan and Honduran students, as well as Salvadorian students, as well as a large number of Puerto Rican students and community members. The impact of this, when we perceive as students being of Mexican descent or Mexican descent being the dominant sort of the main grouping of the population, is that it invisibilizes specifically Central American, South American students, right? And that they don't see themselves reflected in the programming or services, or specifically in the larger context, the narratives and the information that is shared in the news and society in general. Another misconception that we've seen is students, sharing that they're perceived to have a recent migration story. Some additional data also from the Pew Research Center is nearly 4 in 5 Latino immigrants, 78% have lived in the US for more than 10 years. And then the highest, while Panamanian and Mexican immigrants have the highest shares of this measure, many Latino immigrants have been in the US for decades, specifically 46% of Latino immigrants. One point, on this is that as we see continuously, and going back to the diversity within the Latino community, we have students who are either newer immigrants or are transfronterizos, which means that they are in the intersection of living both in the US and Mexico, students who've grown up in Mexico and travel to the US to go to school, elementary school or college, or students who were born in the US and raised in Mexico, specifically in Tijuana, and then travel back and forth. We also have students who are second, third generation, and also the reality that we have both students and community members who can trace their legacy to generations and centuries back, even before the US being recognized as a US territory. So again, for us to being cognizant of that, this diversity within migration and generational experiences. And so in ending this piece of the presentation and moving us to conversation and the Q&A, some steps that I wanted to share specifically, directed at folks that are working with Latinx students and are, do not identify as Latinx yourselves, that really can support in your engagement with students of Latin American descent. Foremost, I would say engage your students, get to know their backgrounds and who they are. Get to know their histories, and getting to know them in a personal level will really not only begin that connection and that relationship building with them, but also enable you to continue to see students themselves and see the wide range and diversity within our student population here at SCSU. Additionally, be attentive to how students identify themselves. I talked about the various terms and noting that folks, not everyone identifies as Hispanic, not everyone identifies as Latina, Latino, Latinx, right? Not everybody identifies as Chicano or Chicanx. So folks have connections to how they're identified, right? Our identities are very connected to how we see ourselves, how our own histories and our own lived experiences. So don't make blanket assumptions about students. Ask them, either be attentive to how they identify themselves or ask them how they prefer to be identified. Another key point that I really want to highlight is make an attempt to pronounce their names correctly. Often we've seen, and those of us with names that are either of Latin American descent or or names that are not recognized as mainstream, often grew up and have seen the impact of names being changed or mispronounced, right? And names have weight. If there's a name that you're struggling with pronouncing, asking a student, what's the pronunciation? What are the best ways that they want to be named, and really taking the moment and the time to acknowledging that importance of their identity and their name. And lastly, all of us, as we know, come with biases through our conditioning, our upbringings, and so forth. So I really welcome all of us and encourage us to be aware of our biases and engaging Latinx students. Be conscious, how do these show up in the way that you perceive, teach, and engage students? And specifically, as I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, really welcome each of you and encourage to take the implicit bias trainings that the Center for Inclusive Excellence provides. I've gone through them myself, and they're excellent, and really, provide us the tools to look at implicit biases and, an array of tools that can be provided. And I specifically, encourage you to continue looking at how these specifically impact Latinx students. And as we continue with these conversations, both through CIE and the Office of Hispanic Affairs. And lastly, to continue having more information and staying up to date with our ongoing programs and events, we have a lineup of programs and guest speakers for the semester. And then ongoing, I welcome you to visit our website, which is listed and is easily accessible through the SDSU MAN website. You can also follow the LRC on our social media platforms, both on Instagram and Facebook, where we post a lot of the flyers and events for our events and our programs. I also encourage you to sign up to our newsletter, our monthly newsletter, where we also share our programs, but we also curate information around resources, scholarships, fellowships, both for our students, as well as opportunities for them to get engaged in the community through internships and volunteer opportunities. And then you're welcome to reach me directly. I've provided my email address as well. And with that being said, we can open it up to questions that folks may have, feedback. Great, thank you. I'm checking the chat here. Thank you, Michelle. So we last semester, when we launched the Comunidad program, we opened it up for students to register. So incoming students were able to register it as a course. this upcoming year, as we're reimagining the Comunidad Scholars to really, hone in and focus on our um, uh, learnings that we had from the semester and where we see the program moving, we'll be launching an application process, which we'll be sharing both through our newsletter and through our various platforms. And so incoming students and prospective students will be provided the information for the Comunidad program where they will apply, and we will select a cohort of students for next year, both including commuter students and residential students.
Well, hi, this is Christine. I'll go ahead and speak. I was waiting to see if there were any other hands up. Yesenia, thank you so much for your presentation. I knew that you were doing some amazing things, but it's the reason that I'm here is I just wanted to learn more about what exactly is going on. And I was really happy to hear about the community that you're building, and happy to also hear about the language, looking at the language status of our Latino students. And one of the yesterday, Dr. Adela de la Torre presented at a Cali Baja dialogue. And so, she was talking about, our status as a Hispanic serving institution. And one of the things that I was very happy that she shared is something that we just launched in international affairs. And in fact, I want to give kudos to Elaine Carr and to Maribel Franco, who are on the call right now. Because through their help, we've been able to launch a global biliteracy seal for Spanish speakers, right? And right now we're just doing it with those two departments. But as I heard you speak, I think that if we really want to call ourselves a Hispanic serving institution, we need to honor the language that Latino students come with, right? And so if you look at the typology of the linguistic typology of our students, like as you mentioned, we have indigenous languages, we have heritage speakers, we have Latinos that don't speak Spanish because, as you said, their language was taken away when they stepped into kindergarten. And so this is an opportunity. Right now, you just gave me an idea. We need to work closely with you in seeing how we could offer this seal for the next round, because right now we're in the middle of this first round with the business department. But I think, Maribel and Elaine, I'm sure you would agree with this, is that maybe the next group that we need to offer this to is to students that are part of the Latinx Center or that identify as that, and would want to have their evidence of their bilingualism. So part of that is because it's global too. You're looking at bilingualism as also a global perspective. So working with you as to what we could do to have them have this linguistic and cultural immersion in a Latino country, and it could be done virtually. So we found out now with the pandemic that not everything has to be with mobility. So I'd like to talk to you more about that, but you just gave me that idea as I was listening to you, because that's why I was here, is how can we in international affairs work closely with you? And I think this is an area that we can help with, and then that is with the language and culture experience. So we'll talk more later, but thank you so much for everything that you're doing.
No, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Alfaro, and as well as to you and your team. And also for folks, I had the opportunity and the privilege of presenting today, but I really encourage folks to reach out and the various, leaders and folks that we have at SDSU with a wide wealth of information. So thank you, Dr. Alfaro, for that. And definitely, as you mentioned, I think, it is a key, I think, both opportunity and need that we have to be able to recognize the importance and the strength in bilingualism for our students.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, through the lens through which we see it is recognizing that diversity within our students, right? And hence why I talk about Spanglish, not just bilingual, but recognizing that some of our students might not have feel comfortable with the full grasp of Spanish, but they have an ability to go in between Spanish and English in such a powerful way, right? And recognizing the importance and the strength of that, as well.
Mm-hmm.
While so with bilingualism, looking at and Spanish and English, also uplifting and not forgetting indigenous languages, right? And other languages that we also hear from, specifically indigenous students who themselves, Spanish is not their primary language, and have gone through the erasure of their languages and the denial of their languages. So,
Yeah,
thank you
so it's
for
really going from language as a problem to language as a resource, and
Exactly.
really seeing it as the asset that it is. So that's what
Exactly.
we're doing to recognize that.
Exactly. Great. So let me just check the chat. So Elma, I see your question around collaborations. And what kind of collaborations are we looking for specifically outside of SDSU? So both, we both welcome and, are really intentional about collaborations both within SDSU. So those of you that, have not necessarily worked with us, I welcome you to reach out to me and we'd love to have conversations about how we can engage in collaborations both through events, but also really bringing in the resources and the information to our students at the LRC so that students, Latinx students, really continue being informed about the wide range of services and resources that exist at SDSU, particularly to the community. That is also something that we are want to be intentional about, of really strengthening the ties with our San Diego community. And looking at our San Diego community beyond SDSU as a campus, and really strengthening relationships with community organizations, community partners. Initially, right now, because of our our really limited capacity, I am currently the only full-time staff at the Latinx Resource Center. So we have not been able to build on those, the relationship building with community partners. But one of the things that we have been doing is curating information and sharing information from community organizations, including MANA, the San Diego, which is a Latina-led organization that fosters education and civic engagement in San Diego region. Centro Cultural de la Raza, which is one of our pillars in the community, and really, speaks to the history of the Chicana and Chicano history in San Diego and the struggles and resiliency, as well as other, opportunities that we've had specifically around paid internships. Sorry, dealing with some a cold here, so bear with me if I lose my voice. But looking at opportunities from organizations that offer volunteer opportunities, right now virtually, but also paid internships. So if we do have community partners on the call, welcome you to reach out to me, and we'd love to be in communication and how we can partner together. Yes, and Wilena, thank you for your question. Yes, that's a great question about the miscegenation. So, here at SCSU, and let me preface it by speaking to the history of specifically the Latinx Resource Center, which really comes from the advocacy of our students. So we had 4 student organizations that led the call for the Latinx Resource Center, as well as the Undocumented Resource Center, to be created and really providing resources and support to both populations. And among those student organizations was CAFE, which is our Central Americans for Education, which was founded by Central American students here at SDSU. And through both the conversations with them and then ongoing conversations that I've had with students who identify who are from Central America, is that often what they find, not just at SCSU, but throughout their educational journey, is that when they are the minority or marginalized group, they're often, their stories, their lived experiences are not recognized and are not specifically seen as both valid, but also just a lack of understanding of who makes up our Central American community. And so one of the things that we're looking at the LRC and our commitment to inclusivity is that while we are fostering culture and thinking about culture, we're looking at it from that inclusive lens and centering specifically communities that have been marginalized. So asking ourselves, who are we missing? How do we ensure that the communities that feel either invisibilized or marginalized are being included? And we do this specifically because we know that the impact to students where they don't see themselves represented, or they don't see their narratives or their lived experiences recognized and validated, has an impact both to their educational journeys, but also how they see themselves, how they show up. So, hence, when I talk about that invisibilization is what we hear from students, that they see themselves erased, invisibilized from the discourse around what it means to be Latin America, or who is considered, Latin American, specifically in areas where they make up, the smaller numbers in population, or in our case in SCSU, in student populations. And another point that I do want to mention there, we're also looking, and we have much more work to be done, but we're also intentional and looking to deepen our work, centering specific Black and Indigenous experiences within the Latinx community in the center, and looking to develop programming, ongoing programming collaborations with the various cultural centers, as well as partners, to really also uplift our students who identify as Black and Indigenous or Afro-Latinx and Indigenous, that they can also see themselves seen and recognized here at SDSU. That we really do have the intentionality of being an inclusive space that uplifts and sees our students again for their full humanity and their full being.
Any other questions for Yesenia? I know we're getting close to time and we've lost a few folks, maybe have to go off and teach or have other meetings at 1, but want to make sure that folks saw the link in the chat to the session evaluation. So please take a minute to do that before you head off. And then really just thank you, Yesenia, for all of this information. And this is being recorded, that'll be on the website, but I also will follow up with folks. You were willing to share your slides with people, right? We're going to post those on the website as well, and make sure folks have links to all the things that were on that last slide in particular.
Definitely, I'll be sharing it with you, Jennifer, and feel free to share with folks. And again, I'll add my email address on the chat. Folks, feel free to reach out and connect, and looking forward to collaborations and in partnerships with folks.
Thank you everyone for coming. Hope that you can join us for other sessions.